Donald Trump. What's the deal with this guy? It's a good question. I don't know. I mean, look, okay, I get why people don't like Donald Trump. There are a lot of things I don't like about Donald Trump either. This is certainly not the leader I think is ideal in some honest world. I don't like how Trump is rude and mean and calls people names. I don't like his approach towards women and minorities. I mean, the way he comes across in that manner, like, I get it. I mean, has he actually made policies? Well, I guess the immigration policies, which I don't support. I don't like the way he's handling those immigration policies and the way that ICE is going around rounding people up. And I definitely don't like the way the conservatives are approaching this without the compassion that these are people who are just trying to get by. I don't like any of this shit. Like, I am not a conservative. I've never identified that way. There's a lot of stuff I don't like about the whole conservative right-wing crowd. I don't associate myself with those people. I mean, sure, some of these people agreed with me on COVID to an extent, that it was all bullshit. Why it was all bullshit? Well, there's a lot of detail on that. I got all kinds of videos on that stuff, right? You should check those out. I got a lot of videos on COVID from, 2020, where I said all kinds of stuff that maybe you watch now, you go, wow, this guy was saying that in 2020? Yeah, I was. Because, all kinds of people say stuff about COVID now. But if you weren't saying it in 2020, then maybe you kind of fell for it for a little bit. Because a lot of these conservative people did fall for this shit a little bit. And then eventually started talking about it. Yeah, right. Anyways, a lot of stuff I don't like about Donald Trump, man. I get it. Not Donald Trump is not someone who I'd want to be. This is not a great man of integrity and morals. Like, this is not the leader I think is ideal in some honest world. No. But that's the thing. We don't have an honest world. And so what are we going to talk about today? I am going to kind of try to spell out a little bit what I think could, be going on with the COVID. No, it's not about COVID this time. What am I talking about? Could be going on with Donald Trump and Q. Yeah, Q. What people know, some people know is like QAnon. Yeah. That. What is going on with that? Because look, I'm not some conservative dude who agrees with all these conservative things, and I think we should get along. And I'm aware of what the deep state does, and especially a lot of the theories on the deep state, on what Biden did, letting all these illegal immigrants into the country, and the ulterior motives they had behind all that. I'm aware of it all, yeah, of course, But that doesn't mean I think we should treat these people that way. I was just like, well, these are still people. The Biden administration, the deep state-controlled Biden administration, used these undocumented migrants as a means to their end. They allowed these people in for their political agenda, and that was pretty fucked up. They took advantage of these people and mistreated them. Definitely in a different way, but also they did that intentionally, not with their best interest in mind. They didn't let all these people in for their own benefit. No, for the people's own benefit. They did it so that, wherever the deep state conspiracy theories on this, they could build their voting block or whatever. Right? And ultimately it is just to cause all these problems in our world, because that's what they about. These entities that feed off of that energy. What? Yeah, we're going to get into some weird shit here, man. All right. I know this video is going to be a lot of me just rambling on about stuff, and most of mine are, and that's okay, because they're my videos. I can say whatever the fuck I want, even fuck, which sometimes I don't say anymore. I used to say, oh, fuck, shit, motherfucker, and then I was like, I'm going to be a little more polished now, sometimes. All right, because some of it otherwise come across like, oh, look at this guy, I'm not that I've gotten into my 30s, you know, and I'm a little more sophisticated, you know? What? I don't know. But I wear shirts like this. This is sophisticated. I mean, this is a shirt not say sophistication. You know, I bought this at Walmart. Actually, I think it came from Walmart. I don't think I bought it. I think somebody gave it to me. Walmart has some cool shirts. And nothing says sophisticated like shopping for your clothes at Walmart, obviously. Anyway, I'm not even sure if this is a Walmart shirt. I think it is. I'm not 100% sure, though. Sometimes I see stuff from Walmart at a thrift store, and it's more expensive at the thrift store than it was at Walmart. That has nothing to do with this video, but just a fun fact, I guess. Okay! We're gonna get into some weird stuff. Look, I'm already trying to set the scene a little bit here. That, like, I'm not big on, like, we gotta get all these immigrants and close the borders and we got Trump's the middleman, listen to the boss. But I'm still interested in this whole Q thing, and really the Great Awakening is what kind of got me interested in all this, right? And so, what's the deal with that? Whoa, well, that's a lot. Yeah, I mean, it is a lot. It's a whole spiritual thing. So let me I'm going to speak a little bit how I got into this stuff, okay? All right. So I'm just a guy going to college trying to figure out the world, right? Okay, here I am. I'm going to college. I'm trying to figure things out. Yeah, what's going on with the world? I started questioning my religious upbringing. I was Catholic, and that shaped how I viewed the world, right? Well, I have a religious family. Went to church every Sunday. What's going on? Well, God created all of us, and, we're here to, and I had that kind of suburban Catholic kind of thing where it was like kind of the Democrat Catholic type, that was exactly the type, right? Yeah. Which, I don't think is very strict to Catholicism, but that's kind of how I was raised, and that's kind of how I shaped, my beliefs of the world were shaped through that religion, that God created everything, and there's this God, and Jesus came and just save us from our sins, and you know the whole story, right? And and then I started questioning all that. I was like, well, what's going on here? Does this God exist? Like, what's happening here? And so I started to study a lot of philosophy. I started studying philosophy in schools. I started studying theoretical physics on my own, try to figure out what's really going on. Like, okay, well, if God's not doing this, what's happening? How is this happening? What's really going on? If that's not it, because I started to, move away from that. Like, I'm not sure this stuff makes sense anymore. I'm not sure these religions are really good and helpful, right? That's what I thought, right? Well, now I have a different perspective on why the religions aren't good, but all right, that's what we're going to get into a little bit. Okay. And so I started questioning that and studying philosophy, a lot of philosophy, because this is all a philosophical topic. I study a lot of science, too. I don't really make a huge demarcation on it, especially when you talk about, like, theoretical physics, theoretical science. That's kind of a model. That's all philosophy. Because, well, I can get into this in another video, but, that's the difference, right? So you have the different hierarchy of scientific knowledge, and, that it's, you start with basic observations and, experiments to create data, and then, and then you can build, like, certain laws of repeated observations, and then you build certain models and theories, theories and then models even higher and paradigms, and, but then it's like, so the observations and the experimental data, okay, that is its own thing, but then it's the building of the theories, and especially the whole paradigms overarching it all. That's the kind of mainstream science perspective, and that's really where you get into philosophy. Yeah, you can just say, like, oh, we're just observations and experiments, and that's all science is. And that presupposes the universe works in a consistent manner to actually mean something when you do these experiments and have this data to construct that this data is representative of how the universe works in some manner. That's still a philosophical aspect to uphold. But when you particularly build these theories of what's happening and how it's all happening, the universe is the system. The Big Bang Theory, the universe is this thing that, right? Darwinian evolution is life formed through, or life evolved through natural selection and random mutations and all that, right? These are the theoretical models of understanding, which are more philosophical because they envelop a whole understanding of what's going on rather than simply data and experimental data, right? Because I can say, well, it's science isn't philosophy. It's like, well, when you build theories and models to try to understand the universe, and then you use that as a picture of what's happening, well, then that's certainly philosophy. But that's not really the point of this video. Although that's a very important point, and it kind of is the point of this video, because it's the point of everything, so, Okay! All right, where are we? So there I was in college, trying to figure things out. I'm studying a lot of philosophy. I'm studying a lot of science. I'm trying to figure out what the universe is, how it works, why it's happening. And the schools taught a model of reductionism and physicalism. I speak a lot about this and why I don't think these models make any sense, because that's what I was taught in schools as a philosophy student. This is a big part to get, right? Because why specifically these constructs of philosophy to argue against? Because that's what they teach in schools. Those are the paradigms in our society, very clearly. You know why the people don't think that? Because they never study this shit. If you did study philosophy, you would know very clearly reductionism and physicalism has been the overarching paradigm of mainstream science. To deny that that's been the case, to deny that this philosophy has played a pivotal role in the development of scientific models and theories is just ignorant. It is blatantly the case. It's not like some secret you have to find out. No, that's explicitly the case. You just don't always get taught that in schools if you don't study philosophy. But if you do study philosophy in schools, you do get taught that in the schools very explicitly. It's not, I don't know, sometimes it annoys me when people are like, well, actually, science, they don't even know what mainstream science is because they just think science is whatever the government tells them it is. Sort of. And the things people say when it comes to science and philosophy, it's just insane. It just shows that they have no idea what they're talking about. And honestly, a lot of people don't know what they're talking about, I saw COVID conspiracy theorists say really dumb things about the word science, and then I saw people who believe the mainstream narrative about COVID say the even more dumb things about science. And, alright, I'm gonna do it. I feel like it's time to it's just more comfortable, and I get the button, and then I'm not doing it to be sexy. If you think, look, I got a lot. I'm trying to get in a hold of my energy body, my subtle body, and so then I'll be sexy. Now I just got good hair. I'm just fucking with you. Okay, look at this guy. He's all sexy. No, I'm not. I just said I'm not. Yet. I'm just fucking, man. Fucking what? You. Fucking with you. The camera. Suck! Whoa! Waha! What are we talking about? It's philosophy. Well, that doesn't narrow it down. It's always about philosophy. It's Donald Trump. Okay. Have we really talked about Donald Trump? Well, yeah, at the beginning I talked all about Donald Trump. I said, well, Donald Trump and, the immigrations, and this guy's not the guy I would be a leader, want to be a leader. Q? Have we gotten to Q yet? No, we haven't gotten there yet. Suck! College! They teach reductionism, physicalism, philosophy. Okay, you're with me, right? Maybe. And so, then what? Wow. Okay. So then, I was like, what really? what really made me see what's important to understand here is the scientific revolution was founded on these assumptions that kind of a dualistic model that consciousness or the soul, which would be related, I'm not going to get in all this around, but the consciousness was separate. The universe works like a machine, and then we study the machine. And that's reductionism and physicalism. It's basically machine-like universe model. We study that, and then, consciousness is just something separate. Usually, the basic model, the paradigm would be that the soul, spirit is the consciousness, which is separate from the physical world, and the physical world works in its own way, and then the soul, spirit, consciousness is just something separate. But either way, the mainstream science was founded on this idea that consciousness is just something separate from the physical mechanisms of the universe, and the universe is working through exclusively local causation, and it can be reduced to that understanding where a system is not any greater than the sum of its parts because there's no feedback loop, no non-local communication to have that all network to create that synergy where a system will feed back and affect the parts that it makes it up, a top-down causation. Okay, that's an important detail. I mean, I'm not going to spell all the philosophy for you in this video, but that's a very important construct to understand. See, that's the thing. If you don't know anything about what the hell I'm just talking about, well, then that's your problem. Do you even know about top-down causation, bottom-up causation? Feedback loops, and then reductionism and local causation only, and that the mainstream models would say that a system cannot be any greater than the sum of its parts, so people don't have free will. The consciousness is just an epiphenomenon of the brain, and it's just just physical states, and it's just somehow makes consciousness, but you don't have any ability to actually affect the way the world works because the world is just a physical mechanism. It's just a physical mechanism. That's what creates the world, and consciousness is something. See, eventually the epiphenomenal model emerged after, they said, well, consciousness is something separate. We're just going to ignore consciousness. We're not even going to talk about it. And they didn't. They didn't even talk about consciousness. If you said consciousness, then, talk about physics and consciousness, they'd be like, whoa, buddy, we don't do that. I mean, many years ago. And then they started to say, well, then it must be this epiphenomenal model. And that's all, because that makes, it's consistent. Because, well, if the universe is a physical system, particularly exclusively with local causation, then consciousness could be nothing more than an epiphenomenon. Consciousness wouldn't have the ability to feed back and affect the universe because then that nature, that causation, that really what you could think of as an strongly emergent, where it could feed back and affect its lower parts, doesn't exist. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff on this. You want to say, actually, mainstream science wasn't founded on this idea of reductionism and wasn't founded on this idea of no strong emergence. I don't think you know what you're talking about, honestly. I mean, you can say, well, it shouldn't have. Well, and I would agree with you, yes, because these things are real. But it was founded on this philosophy. You should know this if you know anything about philosophy and science. Okay, so where were we now? Let me take a drink. I knew I was yelling, and then, your throat hurts. Well, my throat hurts. Your throat. I would have hurt when I yell. The royal you. Yes, we know. Doo-dah, doo-dah. Can't Town Racers sing that song. I don't know why we broke it. I think the beat, when I slapped my chest, it reminded me of that beat, so that's why I did it. Why do we do stuff? Yeah, it's a big question. Is this too, I did it because it was more comfortable, right? See, nice. You ever heard of the Pastoral Restoration Institute and the left, what the hell is it called? Left AIC and right BC. I'm gonna look it up. Well, I'm not gonna talk about that now. I decided that's not worth going off what I'm talking about. Anyway. So yeah, and then no free will. I mean that is the mainstream reductionist physicalists philosophy, mainstream science viewpoint. Okay? And so I was like, well, I don't know about this. And I kept doing research in theoretical physics, right? I was like, I was just still interested in theoretical physics, trying to learn how it works. And I found a lot of interesting stuff in that, and a lot of different theories in quantum mechanics. And there's a lot of different interpretations of quantum mechanics in terms of. So even in certain different theoretical physics models, there can be different philosophical interpretations. So you can find stuff that in some ways agrees with my philosophical model, but is based on an idea of string theory. And then you can find things in string theory that are not related to my philosophical model at all, which is why the philosophies, you got to have both of an understanding, because the philosophy is crucial. Like any theoretical physics, any encompassing theoretical physics model will be a philosophical model. This is what I was covering earlier, right? And so, but there's a lot to get into. Anyway, so I started studying a lot of theoretical physics, and then I got interested in some of the models of string theory and quantum mechanics that could actually have conscious causal agency. And then I found better stuff that is better theoretical physics models, more grounded in sacred geometry, which certainly provides a different philosophical view, right? And so, but the point is, then some of this stuff and different models in theoretical physics relate back to ancient spiritual philosophy, and that's where things really started to make sense for me, and that's where I really went down an interesting path, because now that was wait, what? And then you find out, and then that's where these ancient monuments, these megalithic structures, many of them pyramids, there's pyramids all around the world, not just in Giza, right? And other type of megalithic structures that have this amazing mathematical encodings, and that the sacred geometry, flower of life symbolism, things that in the Simharami's models of unified physics found that's the foundation of the quantum vacuum, is that flower of life geometric patterning. And so, this is really interesting stuff here, because now we're developing advanced models in theoretical physics which break away from the initial dogmatic assumptions of the scientific revolution and actually relate back to philosophy of ancient spirituality, before that got corrupted by the institutionalized religions. That's a big aspect of all this, right? And so, really what I think seems to happen here is that in the ancient past, these people had a much more advanced understanding and to be able to build all this stuff, and had a better philosophical view, more interconnected. And then the religions came along and wanted to squash that, and then they really control how these people practice, because the universe is metaphysical, right? It's all these energy states, it's all this energy, and then you can do these rituals, and what does it do? It cultivates this energy in a system over and above the sum of its parts. And so, you build these megalithic structures on these certain spots of the earth, because the earth is this living geometric field, because it's all a living geometric field. The whole field is a living geometric field, which then emerges out these structures and these entities, which then feed back into the field and feed back, the parts come about, and those parts feed back and create a larger structure within the field, and it keeps going in this nested fractal hierarchy. And there's a lot of feedback, so it's all this connected system, all merging out of this quantum geometric field. Okay. What's this have to do with Q? We're getting there, all right? So, I don't know if you can tell, but I didn't have a good plan of exactly how I was going to do this. I just want to make a video where I talk about stuff. Like I said before, it's my own video. I can do whatever the hell I want. Okay, so we're talking about philosophy, yes, of course. And so, what about philosophy? Well, all of it. So that's kind of, and so it's like, okay, so why? All right, so in the ancient past, these people had more advanced, and then the others kind of, and then like, so what happened, right? And then you kind of get into their creation stories, and you look into all this about what they're talking about, and you get these other type of beings, non-human intelligence, right? Gods, it's non-human intelligence, right? They're beings who aren't from Earth, or non-human intelligence. They're beings who aren't human in terms of like our particular Homo sapien, whatever we are, right? That particular exact type we are, because it could be humanoid, right? So they might look like us, some of them. And which is a whole nother topic on how that's even possible. Because, the universe is a living intelligent system. So, like, there could be this galactic blueprint from our, the center of our galaxy. And then that's part of, we're all connected. And we're all like parts of the galaxy feeding into that. And the galaxy can feed back into us a system over and above the sum of its parts, right? And so we're influenced by whatever the galaxy wants us to do, and the solar system, and the Earth, and our communities. Okay. And so that's kind of, and so we're at what the promise is here, right? Is that what I really got interested is that basically humans on Earth have been influenced by certain other types of beings. Kind of, I'm going to recenter. I mean, it's weird if I'm like over here, right? So I'm going to try to center myself in the camera. Humans on Earth have been influenced by other type of beings throughout our history, and even through certain manipulation of DNA, created our specific form, this specific type of person, right? And, then there's also good ones here. I mean, there's a lot to get into here. And I think they could be, the good ones, bad ones are kind of their experiment. Right? It's just kind of like, when humans experiment on animals, are the humans evil and torturing the animals? Well, sometimes, yeah, actually. So, well, sometimes, but then does it make all humans bad and all humans hate animals? Because then sometimes other humans will get in and stop the humans from torturing and experimenting on the animals that way. And so, right? So then there's good humans and bad humans from that lab animal perspective, right? You see? And so, right, this is kind of how I mean, it's not exactly like that, but something's going on like that with these different non-human intelligence beings, right? And so, really, I mean, okay, so all this is part of how I got into Q, yeah. Because, like, that's, I mean, I don't even really fully explain the whole metaphysical premise, which I'm in the system over and above the sum of its parts and the feedback loop and the bigger systems feeding back and affecting things and affecting how we live and affecting what we are and how, right? That's part of what may be playing out here, okay? And so, yeah. So where are we going with this, right? So we got these, so basically, let's fast forward it now. And I think now we have these certain networks. Because, I mean, I think there are the influences of the non-human intelligence, which is also, not just like these physical beings, right? It could be, like what's a demon? What's a jinn? Like what are all these things that were talked about throughout history? Did they just make shit up? Maybe. Some of it. Or, could there actually be something metaphysically plausible to what this is? And of course, if you're a reductive physicalist, you'd say, no, there can't be such a thing. And that's what the schools tell you to think, right? Can't we trust the schools? No. Why not? Okay, exactly. Because, I mean, how much of the influence is these beings, and how much of the influence is people? And I think, where do the people work for the beings? And, are they sacrificing children to the beings? Are they doing the work of the beings? I mean, who's really, I don't know, man. I've looked into this a lot. I don't really know what's going on there. But I mean, that's what we kind of got, so what's the deep state, right? Currently, I think it is a certain network of, let's just focus on the people here, right? Like what certain people could be doing, okay? And so they try to uphold the limited philosophies, right? I mean, because then if we all got into this kind of ancient spiritual, or, modern theoretical physics that relates to ancient spiritual philosophy, well then, they'll kind of expose their whole bit, right? Yeah, so what do? They try to guard all that, right? That's why there isn't that kind of progress in the scientific community, because it is stifled by this institutionalized dogma, which, I mean, I would have to say traces back to what we can think of as this cabal. Or, right? I mean, who else is doing it? Somebody's doing it. How else would it work? Well, is it because all these people are so stupid and nobody has come along with some good idea? Well, no. People have come along with all kinds of good ideas around this. You can't get through. Who's doing the gatekeeping? I don't know exactly how it works, but somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to doing it. The dogma, obviously there are plenty of people involved who aren't directly corrupted, who believe in the dogma. They believe in physicalism, and so they won't allow any other views to get through. And so, it doesn't mean, just because they are working in those positions, doesn't mean they are directly corrupted. But somehow, it's just like with the government. It's like, well, how does it never really make a good positive change? Because these certain networks, right? And so, well, what networks? Who is this? The cabal. What am I talking about? I don't know exactly. But somehow, there seems to be these networks of people that uphold and stifle our whole development in the philosophy, the extraterrestrials, the technology, free energy, zero-point energy extraction, a lot of that, that stuff is so. And we'll just talked about more, honestly. Even though I don't think it's the most interesting part, but. And the human trafficking networks, because, right? So one of the things that they might do is, so they torture and abuse, a lot of times sexually, children. Sometimes, like young children, that's the thing. Some people talk about, like, Epstein and stuff, and I've seen people indicate, like, that it's just, like, young teenage girls because of these, like, perverted men. And, I'm sure some of that goes on, right? But from what I found, I don't really know. Like, I'm not telling you, like, well, this is what's happening. I don't really know. I don't have some evidence to present to you that, like, well, here's what's happening. I just tried to piece together different things throughout my life. And so I think it's possible what they actually do is, they do these things to young children. And it's just part of what ultimately, and do it on, like, ley lines and stuff. And it ultimately, it's just all this negative energy, right? Because it's like you're within this geometric field, right? It's just this field of geometry. And it's all, like, connected and interconnected, because this is like one geometric field, which emerges these different geometric structures within it based on how it, like, folds in on itself, okay? And basically it folds in on itself as, like, a certain vibration, okay? And it creates a certain vibrational energy within the field. We're all connected through this field, and everything that emerges out of this field and it has a certain geometry and a vibration to it. And our emotions have a pivotal vibration to it. The emotions are tied to the vibrations. And so they torture these children, abuse them, and that creates this kind of low energy vibrations that they plug into the whole field. And then they also, there's like adrenochrome or adrenochrome and all that stuff. And then, the blackmail is some of this stuff, like, right, they just use this as, they tell these people, hey, if you do what we need you to do in these certain areas and promote our political policies and, push through these certain, run your corporation this way, do all that this way, we promise you the riches and everything you want in this life, but you gotta do these things for these kids, and they use that as blackmail. So then when you try to turn on them, they go, yeah, well, we got you on video doing some horrible things to kids, so you're just gonna get the death penalty, or you're just gonna get whatever. I don't believe in the death penalty personally, but that's not really the topic here. And right? So, well, we kind of gone. Let's focus back here on. So basically, giant conspiracy. Humans are being used by non-human intelligence as some sort of weird experiment. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I covered this in my video Beyond the Conspiracy, where really, it's enough. Where I plan on getting into a little bit is really it's all for our own spiritual development. It's all something the universe made up for itself to learn about itself. Because what else is happening? It's all the universe, right? It's all existence, the multiverse, right? That's just doing it to itself. How is that not what's happening? It's all this existence doing stuff to itself. For what reason? Well, what reason do you want to exist? You are existence. What reasons do you have? You want to feel good? Do you want to learn what's going on? Yeah, that's what existence is doing. It's trying to learn what's going on so it feels good. Because existence feels, fundamentally. That's why I'm not a physicalist. Because I think feeling consciousness is fundamental within existence. Okay? Yeah. And so existence feels. Existence can learn. We can learn. We are existence. Okay? And so that's what existence is doing to itself. It's learning. It's feeling. But ultimately, what does it mean to learn if existence isn't bound by time? Because kind of learning has this idea that, there's time, you don't know, and then you know. There's got to be time involved, right? Well, I don't know, man. Because time ultimately is a construct within existence, but it's not a fundamental factor of existence. It's a construct of consciousness. But if consciousness is fundamental within existence, well, that's why we gotta, the whole nature of time. Do we have time to talk about it? Theoretically, I have until a couple hours from now, until I start my festivities for the 4th of July. On the 3rd of July, some people call it the 4th of July Eve, Independence Day Eve. Who calls it that? Well, I just did. I'm some people. Okay! Although some people would imply multiple people. So as long as I just got to get another guy to say, hey, do you say that too? He goes, yeah, sure. I'm sure there's one other guy or gal. Not the point. Okay! What is the point here? Good question. Donald Trump. That's the point. Okay. So, the aliens, right? Yeah. The existence, and then, right? I think from our perspective, it's they try to keep us in this lower vibrational energy states, and then why are they manipulating us to keep us in these lower vibrational energy states? Well, I don't know. They must benefit them somehow. Because think about it. It's well, why? Do you think the cows understand what's going on at the slaughterhouse? Maybe some of the smart ones do. But right, I mean, ultimately, you know, if you're a more superior intelligent being, you could have a type of understanding and you could manipulate people in ways that they don't understand, especially when you control the institutions of their education and you purposely educate them to not understand it, which is what I think has been happening here. And that's why these certain religions took big hold, and then now the models of reductionism and physicalism are still taught in schools, especially when you study philosophy. I mean, if you don't study philosophy, I mean, it's still there. You just don't make it explicit. It's still just like, well, we had religion, but now we have science, and science is open to questioning, even though it clearly isn't. Maybe a little more than religion, but not, I mean, honestly, though, hardly. I think yeah, there are some staunchly dogmatic religious people, and there's plenty of religious people that are open to discussion about the religion. You know, it's like, well, there's people open to discussion about science, but, you know, will they hold true to their paradigms and really not let change? You know, well, we change our minds and present it with new evidence. Bullshit. I mean, sometimes they will, but, like, that's what I was saying earlier. It's like, well, there's all kinds of evidence that ruins the physicalist model, particularly the reductionist, materialist model. I mean, what's even material about our reality? We go down, you zoom in, it's 99% empty space, and then when you find it, you know, what's not empty space? It's just a little force in a field. You don't even, what's there? What's material? The hell is it? Where do you find material? If anything, the evidence is that the reality is not material. I would say scientific evidence shows that. Experimental data, you know, you go down, you know, observational data, you know, you use high-powered microscopes and whatever. I don't know how they figure that out. I mean, honestly. I personally haven't observed it. I should clarify on that. I can just do secondary research, maybe even tertiary, on some secondary. On, you know, I just read the papers on theoretical physics. And because it's not always microscopes. I mean, like, what's the Large Hadron Collider? Like, okay! Oh, it's not a microscope, but I mean, I think microscopes are involved, right? Sure. So, where are we going with this? So, you know, you got Q, okay? Well, so first you gotta get... So why did I get interested in this cabal? Well, because I think somehow there's humans and ultimately other beings. I mean, first I got interested in the other beings, and then it led me to the fact of like, well, what really, you know, how is this working? And it's just like, well, because there's certain networks in our society now which work to stifle free energy, which work to intentionally. Free energy is actually a big part of what I got into first, because that was part of the theoretical physics models I was understanding. And so it was like, wait, we have this energy source, and there's like governments that like try to like stop that, yet they preach to us how we need to find this clean energy. It's like, well, no, it seems like we have it. You just don't want it. But again, it's not all the same people. Climate change, that's a different story. Because I mean, the mainstream narrative of climate change would be bullshit if they are stifling free energy. Because it's like, well, no, I think that solves our problems if we have this abundant clean energy source and you're not letting us use it. So, because that would, I mean, we should stop pollution. We should completely change our perspective and relationship with the earth. So, like, right? I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm not conservative. Definitely not liberal or leftist either. But okay. So, you know, you got, well, you know, the point is, you know, there's this cabal, right? I mean, you don't really need to get the connection and the rest of it. But it's like right now, there's this network of people, and they abuse children for whatever reasons, you know, right? And they're politically corrupt, you know, they influence politics for the part of their agenda, and they try to hide and like don't let themselves get caught by certain agencies because they control these agencies to some degree, or did. And that's why you never had all these people arrested so far with Epstein and all that, you know, like what's going on? Like why isn't that because of this human trafficking cabal? That's really, to some factor controlling here, right? There's these groups, this network of people who does these bad things and influences politics and corporations and media, whatever they need to try to influence in our society, to try to indoctrinate the masses and influence their control over them as possibly as part of the bidding of the non-human intelligence entities. Okay? And so, first I kind of started to get into this stuff, like, whoa, what? Right? Like, whoa, what are they doing? Like, what? Why are they doing this? Like, why aren't we stopping these people? Like, what's going on with this? Right? Because, obviously that's pretty bad. No one thinks children should just be abused like that. That's just not something that anyone would support. It's pretty messed up. And so, it's like, oh, okay. That's weird. And so, first I got into that. And that was before, I started getting into stuff before Trump ever ran. I was definitely into the philosophy before then. And I kind of started getting into the conspiracies around that 2015, 2016 time, okay? And really started to put it together. Really started to get into, I was into like, I wouldn't necessarily call it, I would call it a conspiracy, but, and that's a whole other topic of like, what is a conspiracy exactly? But I was really into stuff, before then of like, oh no, like, we can't trust the government. People say they don't trust the government, but then say they're a conspiracy theorist and don't think there's a deep state. Which honestly, if you think about it, if you don't trust the government and you think the government consistently acts in a manner that doesn't help the people but serves some other interests, well then that's exactly what the deep state would be. How would that work if there weren't a deep state? Like, by definition? Now, you might not think it's exactly this cabal who does these things to serve the bidding of this non-human intelligence and this lower vibrational consciousness energy. Okay. But, I'd still say that it's got to be a deep state. It's got to be, that's kind of the definition of a deep state. It's like something that controls the state, the government of a nation, in a manner that doesn't actually serve the people. It's not actually the democracy, the rule of the people for themselves, but is actually an imposition of this, it's an illusion of the control of the people, and really, behind the scenes, there's networks that do their bidding to control and manipulate the people. Right? And so then, I slowly started to get into a more formalized these conspiracy theories, and then kind of got more of an idea of like this deep state. And this before I really, I voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. So like, right? Okay, yeah, I did. And because I didn't really understand it all back then. I was there, so obviously I didn't really fully get it. If I voted for Hillary Clinton, I obviously couldn't have gotten it that well. So obviously at that point, I didn't fully grasp all of this like I do now. I could be wrong, so I didn't have the understanding I do now. Not that I'm grasping some truth necessarily. It's just my opinion on what's going on. But, so... And I've always been raised Democrat. That's why I voted for Hillary Clinton, because everyone in my family voted for Hillary Clinton. I was like, let's see, 2016, I would have been, what, I don't know. 2016, I would have been, damn, I would have been 27? All right, well, no, 25. I was born in 91, not 98. 89. Okay! Yeah, so I'm like 25. I didn't know what I was doing. But that's the thing. I kind of, at that point I was more into philosophy and thought like, well, there was aliens and a line of us had aliens, but I didn't, and then the government's just money hungry, but I didn't realize that like what the deep state really was at that point and how, their control over all that. And then slowly I started to get into all that, okay? And I didn't really, look, I remember I voted for Hillary Clinton. And I kind of secretly hoped Trump won in 2016. I do kind of remember that. Because I was kind of like, I 100% wasn't... Well, so Q didn't come out technically until 2017. So that was after the election of 2016. About a year later. Q came out October 28th, 2017. So there's also something before Q, like Mega Anon. That's what David Wilcock talks about. But, yeah, so, officially, Q specifically, but obviously the whole idea behind it, I got other videos on this. Well, actually, no, I have videos on this. I got deleted by YouTube? Because I talked about the 2020 election. And, well, you can't do that. You couldn't do that, right? So if you talked about maybe the election was rigged, you could get your videos banned on YouTube. But then 2023, they changed their policy. So now you can talk about the 2024 election being rigged and your video won't get banned, right? Yeah, okay. So, no, they changed the policy. Now you can talk about the 2020 election being rigged. I mean, they changed the policy 3 years after the 2020 election to allow talking about any election being rigged. And it's just like, oh, okay, so now we can talk about it. So, I mean, a little late. You waited 3 years and then you let us say it. Just like, I also got posts deleted on Facebook for saying COVID came from a lab. And it's like, well, then Facebook reversed the policy. So it's like, oh, now you can say it. Okay, a little late now. I mean, you waited 2 years or close to 2 years. I don't remember exactly. But, because I recently looked up, because I was curious. I see a lot of people talking about the 2023 election now. The 2024 election being rigged. And it's like, well, I mean, I got my video deleted on YouTube for talking about election fraud. So, like, is YouTube consistent here? I don't think they should delete their videos. Just because mine got deleted doesn't mean I think theirs should get deleted, even if they have an opposite opinion of mine. But still, I was curious whether YouTube was consistent. And, well, I mean, they changed the policies. So, convenient, right? Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, so that's the kind of... Eventually, I started getting interested in this cabal. And I don't remember when I first started hearing about Q. Let me, as I said, in 2016, Trump was saying, I don't remember exactly if he necessarily was using this term deep state as much. I mean, he definitely says it now. But, he very clearly was supposedly this outsider of, well, the Democrats are corrupt and, all this and blah, 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 I didn't want to write, it was very clearly like the system's rigged and, I'm going to fix the system and I'm going to stop all this stuff, right? I mean, that was clearly his mantra in the 2016 election, make America great again, right? But, before Operation Paperclip, well, I mean, that's part of it. The Nazis. But Trump's a Nazi. I don't think that's true. Even if Q's not true. I mean, he's not, although maybe he is literally a Nazi. Yeah, sure, I guess. If Q's not true. Or legitimate. That true works. See, I don't like the word real, because then it's just like, well, it's definitely real. Like, Q is definitely real. Whether it's legitimate, that's a different story, right? Because, I mean, it exists. But is it really what it says it is? Well, what does it say it is? Well, so what is Q? Well, I mean, was I ready for that yet? Well, we'll see. So the deep state, right? And then if I, really started getting into all this stuff about, like, the deep state, like, specifically, like, this kind of network of people, and they're kind of... I haven't watched Alex Jones in many years. I mean, Alex Jones doesn't even like Q. That makes sense. I don't understand why people would support Trump, but, like, not be into Q. That doesn't really... Especially if they're, like, the conspiracy theorist type. And if they're not the conspiracy, I mean, still, actually, I stand by that in general. Why would anyone support Trump if they're not in Q? I don't know. Because then I was like, well, what are you interested in here? But, I've gone almost an hour, and I really haven't gotten into what I wanted to. Well, that's okay. Because what I want to get into is that I don't think it's straightforward here, okay? I don't think it's very, like, is Trump... Okay, so you got this deep state cabal, but I think, it's all really... And they abuse children, and that's kind of the narrative of Q, okay? But it's more about, like, this great awakening. And, the very narrative of Q is, like, Trump's going after this cabal that does these things to abuse these children. And that, like, they traffic children, and they take them to places, and they murder them, they sacrifice them, they abuse them, and stuff, right? That's the idea. And then that, part of what Q's in is like, well, they're going after these people to stop them from doing these horrible things. Like, and it's not just children, I guess, they do bad things, right, to people. And so that's bad. They're going to stop them. I mean, that's part of the narrative. But I don't think it's very, I mean, where I'm getting at here is, what I think is really going on, it really, it all hinges on the metaphysics, right? And like I was saying earlier about the feedback loop and the system over and above the sum of its parts. And little things, were made of these cells, which make up these tissues and organs and, these systems in our body, and it makes up our body, and then, they feed up into us and create us, but we feed back into them and then influence how they do. Because, right? All my cells just moved over here. Well, how'd they do that? Did they do that just through their own? Was that programmed into the cells necessarily? Or was it through my mind that I moved my whole body? So that's the system over and above the sum of its parts, able to strongly emerge the feedback, the top-down feedback, to move all the parts in synchronicity over in the different ways, to do a little dance. I like dancing. Do a little dance, make a little love, get down tonight, baby. Casey and the Sunshine Band. Good stuff. Yeah. So you're right. I mean, yeah. Are you with me? Maybe. I have no idea whether anyone is ever going to watch this video, and that's what I love about it. I'm going to post it. I haven't spent over an hour doing this shit to not post this video. So, where are we? Yeah, you got Donald Trump. Here's what I'm saying here. Okay. So, here's the deep part I want to get into. Okay, I think we're ready. Are you ready? I'm ready. You've probably been ready for 20 minutes. Maybe even 50. That's 6 minutes. You're like, come on, buddy. I ain't got all day. You saw how long this video was. You chose to watch it. Or maybe you didn't, and you're made to watch this, which is like, who's making people watch my videos? I don't think that's happening yet. I don't ever want that to happen. No, if you want to watch my video, it should be your choice. Your body, your choice. All right. So, where I want to get into this is what I think is the Great Awakening. So we're moving past this manipulation of this cabal one way or another. Because that's what I got into before I really got into Q and Trump. I was kind of, got in, and as I was getting into this conspiracy stuff, it was all while I was also developing a greater spiritual understanding. I mean, it all kind of goes together for me, right? Because the conspiracy is ultimately a spiritual thing. The universe is ultimately a spiritual thing, right? It's ultimately, like I was saying earlier, of its existence discovering itself, its existence fractalized with different nodes of awareness, getting back to, perhaps, its balanced geometric state. This is a perfectly balanced geometric state, but then it fractalizes out, and then it learns about what it is only through going out of this balance, and then maybe, it gets a little too distorted and wants to go back. I don't know, right? We're not going to get on that. But, it exists, it's ultimately the existence coming into its own awareness, right? I mean, it is the awareness of existence of itself, right? And so, it's all good. It's all okay. We're not, we're not fundamentally, ultimately victims of some alien agenda, because ultimately, super ultimately, we're the existence doing it to itself, right? And so, but it has all the feedback loops, so it's a lot of dynamics here. It's the Earth doing it to itself. It's the Sun doing it to the whole solar system. It's the galaxy. It's the galactic cluster, supergalactic clusters. It's all that stuff. I believe the supergalactic cluster we're a part of is called Laniakea. Just a fun fact. Okay. So, I think it's galactic supercluster. I sometimes say supergalactic cluster. It's galactic supercluster. Not important. Okay, so Donald Trump? Yeah. All right, so look, I mean, I said all my stuff about Donald Trump. I mean, it's not the guy I want to lead us. I mean, I think sometimes he's an asshole. Oh man, I'm not a fan of Trump. Sometimes I'm like, fuck this guy, But what I think is going on here is it's all a means of our own great awakening. So we're moving past the control and the manipulation of these non-human intelligences which have tried to keep us in this lower vibrational energy state for thousands of years. We're moving past that into a new world. Not the New World Order, but a new world, like, densities of consciousness and these densities of existence, right? A new plane of understanding, this whole greater perspective, higher vibrational reality. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I could try to explain all of what I think this means, but how long you got, right? All right, so it's like, what's going on with Trump? And I think one way or another, I think we're going to move past all the manipulation and control and corruption of this old world, this historic manipulation of these non-human intelligences and all these cabals, which are trying to take advantage of us and keep us in a lower vibrational energy state for whatever reasons they're really doing it for. We're moving past that, and then that's going to go away. So then it's a slow, but it's got to be, you can't just, if you've manipulated people so bad and so hard, to just all of a sudden tell them you did it and just like remove it all, could cause too much trauma, and then we don't move on from it. We just destroy ourselves, and that was no better, right? I mean, it's kind of like if you have a domesticated animal, and maybe you domesticated and controlled in a way that is not very nice to the animal, right? And then you just like release it into the wild, and it wasn't ready for that, right? It wasn't. That you could say, well, that's better for the animal. It doesn't want to be in this cage. It wants to be out in the wild and free. And then it's like, well, then, but it's not. It can't survive out there like that. Right? I mean, it's an analogy, obviously. I'm not saying it's literally like this. But, and so what I think's happening here is that things are slowly, all of this is an elaborate scheme to erode the system and help us move toward this greater, more integrated perspective, and to erode the dogmas and help expose everything for people. Okay? I mean, that's the pivotal aspect of all this. And so, in a lot of ways, I think, that Trump is playing a role in this. Not that he's necessarily aware of it, but it's part of the whole feedback of all of it, right? Of the Earth, of the sun, the galaxy, all of it, it's feeding back, and it's, influencing us and influencing how things work. It's all metaphysics. It's not just a linear, basic causation pattern. It's a dynamic feedback loop. And so it's all working in a certain way to help us break out of that dogma and control. And then Trump is playing that role. This is, one idea, right? Of, Trump is playing, I'm not saying this is necessarily what's happening. I'm saying it's one idea of it. Trump is playing that role, in some way to help erode this. And so, in a lot of people's perspective, Trump isn't playing the role of the good guy. What I'm saying here is it's not so straightforward that we have these deep state cabal and they abuse kids and they do all this messed up stuff and, and then Trump's coming along and he's going to stop it. It's not so simple. That's why, I mean, if it were, then he should just go out and, say it all and just, stop them and, do it all. What are you waiting for? Just go, stop these people, arrest them, put them away, You know, if they're abusing kids and they're doing horrible things and you know, like stop them from doing it, take them down, expose it all, tell everybody about it, release the free energy, let the aliens go, you know, let's interact with them and let's go, baby, yeah, I'm ready, baby. I'm ready. I would love it if they just did that, right? You know, that'd be great, wouldn't it? But there's more, it's a more complicated thing than that, right? And so, what I think is happening, and that's like with COVID. I mean, COVID created more conspiracy theorists than any random dude on YouTube making a video trying to tell people about it, you know, because it showed people. It exposed it all for people. And so I think that was like Trump's role in this. I mean, Trump, you know, at the time kind of supported the lockdowns. Trump heavily pushed the vaccine. He did. He didn't support mandates, which I appreciate. But, I mean, I don't know if you could have guessed this, but I sure as hell didn't get that vaccine. Hell no. And so, you probably knew that, though. I'm a pretty big COVID conspiracy theorist, right? And so, I mean, but anyway, what I'm saying is, it was all part of this. It's all a part of eroding that dogma. And because here we go here. So, I think some of this, it exists as a metaphysical structure. And these metaphysical structures are these, like, if you will, higher dimensional, like, geometry. And then so it's like, and it, persists. It's like these, sort of like, in sort of a higher dimensional way, a morphogenic field. Which is kind of, the field, which is kind of how the body. And I think the morphogenic fields is more than just like organic, but I think, and it's the influence, this greater structure that influences and has causal impact, kind of that higher dimensional feedback loop, that top-down causation. That's part of it. What that does, right? And so and that's a form in the geometric field. It's a geometry. It's not necessarily physical, but it's mathematical in a way. It's all this geometry and these vibration forms, which then create. The phenomenal matters, though. So the phenomenal does matter, and that's a lot to get into, man. I've been working on this for years, right? Because I'm a fan of like Plato's theory of forms and everything, and the geometry and there's a relationship between all the the forms of like love, beauty, right, and all this of redness and everything, has a form of like a geometry, and that's like its own, and then the universe is created through these. This holographic projection of these forms or something like that, right? Okay, yeah, sure. And so, it's eroding the system. So Trump it's not a straightforward thing where like Trump's just fighting this cabal and he's going to take them down. And that's kind of how, I would say a lot of conservatives who really aren't into Q and a lot of aren't into the esoteric philosophy might see it. Well, Trump's fighting the deep state. And he's doing all, they might think, 4D chess, but I think that's more a term people use when they're into the esoteric stuff, right? And it's not necessarily, though, because, a lot of people say a lot of stupid stuff where I think, like, sometimes I forget that, like, not everybody in the Trump is in the Q, and so it's just kind of like, oh, well, that's not what I think is happening. But, that's what I'm saying, it's, what is happening here? He's playing a role. So in some ways, he's playing a role as the bad guy for some people. It's like an archetype. It's the fool, right? And and that's helping them awaken to a bigger picture. And so Trump might even be a bad guy. He might even be involved with Epstein in that network, right? But then that still helps us move toward that great awakening, because it's not about Trump. It's about us eroding that indoctrination, moving away out of that energy state they try to keep us in throughout history. Energy state is and just try to keep us in that state. And we're eroding that and moving toward a more open and loving world. Okay? And for a lot of people, Trump is, a lot of people are huge conspiracy theorists who hate Trump now. And then, they never would have, a lot of people say things that, are 100% conspiracies, like, well, the government now, the president of the United States is actually involved in a human trafficking network, and the FBI and CIA are colluding to cover that up. It's like, well, that's exactly what a conspiracy was 10 years ago. A pretty big one, yeah. I mean, that's like, oh, yeah, there's actual, there's factors within the government, multiple people all colluding, different sectors of the government colluding to hide this stuff in order to lie to the people and actually impose an agenda on them that's not for their best interest. That's exactly what the conspiracy theory is. You just see it in a different way. And so, it's not just a straightforward, Trump's a good guy, he's here to rescue us. There is a more elaborate picture going on of humanity, of all existence of spirituality, and it's all developing a certain way to help us move past the old school dogma and indoctrination to create a better world. Okay? It's not just Trump fighting the deep state. It's all an elaborate scheme of all of it. Everything is all part of it because it's all connected. It's everything, right? It's all, I would say, and it's all my speculation, right? I'll make that clear, okay? This is just me just thinking about stuff and giving you my own perspective. Okay, so it's all, I don't know, man. I'm just some guy making a video. So it's all kind of, where are we going with this? It's all to help us move toward our best interests and pushing us toward that world. Because that's an optimistic view, man. Like, what do you want? That's very optimistic. Everything serving our greatest interest. Now, the key is, you still got, it's about you. Your reality is a reflection of you. Okay? You have to do the work. What is the work? Some people say that a lot. It's... And that's what a lot of it is, right? It's helping each individual node, through all nodes in the bigger picture, right? The nodes to go within and discover their own self, which is the universe, because you are that consciousness. You are the existence experiencing itself. And it's, it's working towards this, moving us towards that. We have to do our own, the spiritual, because that's what what's our own spiritual work? It's like feeling your energy body, right? The subtle body. That's what I've been working on a lot. And it's like calming the mind to really listen to the greater reality, right? Because it's, the physical world, it's like, we're talking about, it's like the, excuse me. Right? There's more than what we see, and it's all part of it, and we have to feel the greater presence of all the geometry around us and the energy around us. And then, integrating, I want to ground. I need to ground. I'm pretty out there. Right? I need to ground. Connection to the breath and the body. And, because we're not just a spirit that's trapped in a body, right? Because the body isn't separate. There's a certain level of perception that the spirit is having. The spirit isn't just the body doesn't exist as a separate world and the spirit's just stuck there. It's just, the spirit's just having a certain perception of this world. The physical world doesn't exist in itself fundamentally independent of the spirit. Right? And that's my perspective, right? And so, what I think is going on is we're moving toward that, and this is all part of some sort of higher dimensional feedback loops, I guess, right? Is one way to think of it. And that, is affecting and helping us move toward that greater interconnected spiritual view and helping us reconnect with ourselves and doing all that. And so, that's what I'm saying. That's the point of this. It's not so straightforward where it's like, well, Trump's the bad guy, so that means, that Q has to be a psyop. I mean, if Q is a psyop, yeah, it was so people won't try to save themselves and look outside for the savior, right? It's that complex, trying to make us think that, like, we don't need to ground ourselves and create our own internal happiness. We can wait until the government finally, the corruption ends, and Q comes along and exposes the corruption of the government, and then we'll be happy once that happens, instead of realizing that we have to create it within ourselves first, right? Because, that's a huge part of, like, meditation and all that, and, like, all those different types of sort of belief systems in that regard. It's like, you create your own happiness through your own, usually, like, meditation is a big part of that, right? And so that's part of the idea here. And that's what I'm saying, is that it's not so simple. Trump's the good guy fighting the deep state. It's more an elaborate scheme to help us erode the old school patterning and program. That's why maybe it turns out Trump was involved with Epstein. He did bad things. But then it's like, my point was never, well, I like Trump. Trump's a good guy. Right? You see what I'm saying? My point was, we need to move away from the deep state indoctrination toward a more spiritually integrated society. And so, I still think all of this is serving that goal. Whether Trump is truly consciously working towards fighting the deep state or even controlled by the deep state influence will go away either way, and we will move towards that spiritual loving society. Whether Q is legitimately an operation fighting the deep state or it's a deep state psyop, I'm still optimistic that it's all ultimately serving our best interests towards that future of that spiritual loving world. And that's kind of how I see all of this. So it's not just like, well, I like Trump, Trump's a good guy, just trust Trump. No, it's not that simple. You should be critical of Trump, and so let's say we expose all this stuff. It's like, well, then we still have to, like, build a better world and figure out the world we want to build and live, right? We still have to do the philosophy and figure out what's good, right? So, just exposing all the lies won't actually help us build the world. We still have to create it ourselves. We still have to understand and do the work ourselves. And so that's kind of how I see it. And this is elaborate and esoteric. This all relates to, like, esoteric philosophy, which is a huge part. There's this esoteric philosophy that's been around for thousands of years, and it all relates, makes more sense. It's spiritual, and it makes more sense than the exoteric religions, and definitely makes more sense than the mainstream science belief systems. And so why don't we just, if people are so smart, why don't we just all talk about this more? It's like, well, that's the conspiracy here, right? Yeah. And so, no matter what's going on with Q, I'm optimistic for our future. And I don't think, regardless of what's going on with Q, Trump is someone we want to lead us in the future. We could have people who aren't like Trump doing all that. But regardless, I still think it's serving a role, helping people awaken, even if the archetype Trump is playing for some people is the role of the bad guy, legitimately. And maybe he is involved with Epstein, that's being covered up. But guess what that does, right? You see how that, right there, if true or not, honestly, right? It is, that has done more work to kind of make people realize that there could be a human trafficking cover-up in our government more than anything. especially people who otherwise weren't, dismiss this idea. Now all of a sudden, they're able to understand that that's possible because of Trump. Even if Trump really is in it. If he's not, then it still definitely helps, and that would make more sense with Q. That no, he's not. He actually is fighting that. That would be more in lines with exactly the way it's presented by Q, right? So, I'm not saying I think Trump really has done all that stuff. I would say if I had to pick, I'd say no, I would go with no. But, even if he is, that doesn't really change the fact that I think this is all working out to serve our best interests as an operation to expose all that. And that's what really matters. Well, what really matters is ultimately helping build that spiritual loving world and going within ourselves to find that within ourselves. And so that's what really matters. And then part of doing that is to erode the old school philosophical dogma. Right? And so, that's just how I kind of see it a little bit. And so it's not, I'm just interested in building that spiritual loving world. And whether Trump's legitimate, whether Q is legitimately opposing the cabal or it's actually kind of part of it, I still think the cabal manipulation will go away eventually and we'll build that world regardless. And that's all kind of serving that, because that's kind of the beyond the conspiracy premise, is that even though they are manipulating us and doing these horrible things to us, which from our perspective is terrible and we won't want that at all, it ultimately is a factor of existence doing it to itself to serve its greater agenda and goals. And that's kind of cool, I think. It's optimistic, okay, right? I don't really know what's going on here. I don't like any of this stuff. Look, it's saying oh, you think it's all serving our goals? And it's well, nah, that doesn't mean I like it, okay? Yeah, sure. I'm not saying it's good. Or I'm not defending it. It's just kind of one way to look at it, man. But I think that's enough. I think I kind of got my point here, right? That it's not a straightforward thing with Trump and Q. That it's more of an elaborate factor of a spiritual, esoteric, multidimensional feedback loop of existence doing what existence does, which I don't know. I guess it's this. Being aware, doing geometry stuff. I don't know. Yeah, you got it. All right, I gotta sign off. Sort of. I guess I'm just gonna end the video. All right, love you guys. Thank you.